So we're constantly told that in real estate, you basically have to choose between two completely opposed strategies, right?
Right, like oil and water.
Exactly. On one side, you have pure passive income, like the Holy Grail, where you buy an asset, stabilize it, and just, check your bank account while sitting on a beach somewhere.
Yeah, the dream.
Right. But then on the other side, you have impact investing. That's the gritty, hands-on, community-driven work that changes lives, but usually requires you to sacrifice your personal time, your margins, and honestly, your sanity.
Oh, absolutely. And it challenges this core assumption that most investors hold,
Yeah.
right? The idea that doing good and maximizing stable returns are mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
But that's a myth, actually. And it's one we are going to completely dismantle today using some very compelling, fresh data.
I am so ready for this. But real quick, speaking of freedom and independence, I really hope you listening had a fantastic and, safe 4th of July yesterday.
Yeah, hopefully you still have all your fingers intact after the fireworks.
Exactly, because you're going to need them to take notes today. We are digging into an entirely different kind of explosion, a massive boom in a very specific niche of the real estate sector.
It's a huge shift.
It is. But before we break down the mechanics, I want to give a quick thank you to the sponsor making this research possible, which is Flowers and Associates Property Rentals. They specialize in consulting directly with landlords and investors to stabilize their rental income through special needs housing.
Which is incredibly relevant to what we're doing today.
So relevant. Their mission just lines up perfectly with our objective, because today we are dropping the latest installment in our ongoing series, Special Needs Housing versus Assisted Living Facilities.
Right, and we are meticulously analyzing the landscape of every single U.S. state in this series.
Every single one. And today's destination takes us down to the Sunshine State.
Florida. Yes, Florida. We're looking at it through the lens of this highly detailed 2026 guide published by award-winning real estate investor Robert Flowers.
And the primary mission for this deep dive is to untangle the persistent confusion between these two entirely different asset classes. I mean, you see it all the time.
Oh, constantly. Investors, caregivers, local landlords, they always conflate assisted living with special needs housing.
Yeah, you look at real estate forums and someone will say, hey, I want to open a special needs home. And the next 10 comments are just warning them about, nursing regulations and healthcare audits.
Exactly. They panic. So the overarching goal for us today is to clearly separate the operational healthcare business from the real estate asset itself.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to do that, we really have to look at what is actually being delivered to the resident inside the building, right?
Right. That's the core distinction.
So let's start by dissecting the assisted living facility, or the ALF. When you, as an investor, look at a prospectus for an ALF in Florida, you have to understand you are not looking at a traditional multifamily rental.
No, not even close. What's fascinating here is that you're looking at a heavily regulated healthcare ecosystem. It just simply happens to be housed within a residential structure.
Right, the building is secondary almost.
Exactly. In Florida, an ALF is defined strictly by the service delivery model. You aren't just providing a roof and, collecting a rent check on the first of the month.
You're contractually and legally obligated to provide meals, right? Like 24-hour supervision.
Yes, and direct assistance with the activities of daily living. So that means bathing, dressing, grooming, ambulation, and critically, medication management.
Wow. Okay, so my analogy for this is that running an ALF isn't just being a landlord. It's like trying to run an apartment complex, a restaurant, and a minor medical clinic all under one roof.
That's a perfect analogy. You're running 3 businesses at once.
Which introduces a staggering amount of operational friction. I mean, think about the staffing alone. You aren't just dealing with a property manager.
No, you're managing a rotating staff of caregivers, dealing with the payroll, state health inspectors, and just the immense liability of medication errors.
Which brings up a big question. Does this mean an ALF investor is essentially buying themselves a massive operational headache?
Well, the liability is the critical factor there. Florida requires very specific standard or specialty state licenses, and it depends entirely on the acuity level of the residents.
Acuity level meaning how much care they actually need.
Exactly. So if your residents have escalating cognitive issues, like Alzheimer's, for example, you need an extended congregate care license or a limited mental health license.
Oh, wow. And I assume those aren't easy to get.
No, every single one of those licenses comes with its own dense layer of compliance, resident record auditing, and really strict emergency protocol.
Right, like if a hurricane hits the Florida coast.
Which it does.
Yeah, a standard landlord just worries about what, boarding up the windows. But an ALF operator has to execute a state-mandated evacuation plan for dozens of really fragile individuals.
You're coordinating medical transport, temporary sheltering. You are a healthcare operator first and a real estate investor second.
So why would you, as a standard real estate investor, take on that kind of operational risk? I mean, the cap rates must be incredibly attractive to justify the headache.
They are. Many do it because it can be profoundly lucrative if you scale it correctly. And honestly, the societal value is immense.
Sure, our senior population is just exploding right now.
And they desperately need comprehensive care. But you are entirely correct that it's not passive. Which brings us to the alternative that Robert Flowers outlines for 2026, which is special needs housing.
Right. And this model completely pivots away from that senior care monolith, right? It serves a much broader, highly underserved demographic.
Yes, we are talking about veterans transitioning back into civilian life,
Yeah.
adults with physical or developmental disabilities,
Individuals in the final stages of substance recovery, or even people facing imminent homelessness, right?
Exactly. And the big differentiator here, the fundamental distinction from the text, is the mechanism that changes the entire risk profile for the investor.
And what is that?
In special needs housing, the property owner is explicitly not the direct care provider. The housing and the care are completely bifurcated.
Okay, because the special needs model separates the housing from the care, it completely changes the daily reality for the investor. Let's break down that mechanism.
Let's do it.
Because that's really where the passive income claim originates. Yeah. If I own the asset, say like a large single-family home in Orlando, my legal and operational lane is strictly limited to providing the physical environment.
Right, making sure it's clean, safe, affordable, and up to code.
Right. I'm functioning purely as a specialized property owner. But obviously, adults with developmental disabilities or individuals in recovery still require significant daily support.
Of course they do.
So how does that support arrive if I'm not the one providing it?
This is where the model relies on a collaborative community infrastructure. Outside entities absorb the operational burden of care.
Like who?
So nonprofits, state agencies, community support organizations, and Medicaid waiver providers. They step in to handle the actual resident services.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they deploy the case managers, the visiting nurses, the behavioral therapists, the life skills trainers. All of that is on them.
So to visualize this for everyone listening, let's upgrade the standard landlord analogy. It's like you own a commercial theater building.
Okay, I like this.
You carry the property insurance, you maintain the HVAC, you make sure the structural integrity is sound.
Right. You're the building owner.
Exactly. But a completely independent touring production company rents the space to actually put on the play. So if a stage light falls because the ceiling caved in, that's a premises liability issue. That's on you.
Yep.
But if an actor forgets their lines or gets sick or the director mismanages the budget, that is entirely the production company's problem.
That perfectly illustrates the liability firewall. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it explains why this separation of powers is brilliant.
It really isolates your risk to just the real estate asset itself.
Exactly. If a resident requires a specific medication protocol, the visiting nurse or the contracted community agency manages that schedule.
Right.
Not you.
Right.
If there's a medical complication, the liability falls on the agency's medical malpractice insurance, not your property liability insurance. It allows everyday landlords to participate in social impact without having to become healthcare operators.
Wait, let me play devil's advocate and challenge the reality of that firewall for a second.
Go for it.
Because trial lawyers are notoriously thorough.
Right.
If an incident happens on my property, won't they just name the landlord in the suit regardless of who is providing the care?
They might try, sure.
And furthermore, if I'm leasing my property to an agency or directly to tenants backed by an agency, I still have to navigate like a labyrinth of local zoning laws, the Fair Housing Act, and incredibly complex partnership agreements.
Yeah.
I mean, the operational friction might not be medical, but it sounds like a legal and bureaucratic nightmare.
You are identifying the exact friction points that sophisticated investors have to master, because it is not entirely hands-off.
Right.
You are trading medical operational risk for legal and structural compliance. But let's look at how the liability is actually mitigated in the real world.
Okay.
When you structure these deals, you're often signing a master lease agreement with a highly capitalized nonprofit or a government-backed agency. Or You have strong indemnification clauses built into the partnership contracts. They become the guarantor.
So the stability of the income is actually bolstered by the institutional nature of the partner. You aren't just relying on an individual tenant's W-2 income.
Precisely. And let's address your point about zoning and the Fair Housing Act, because understanding how these models operate naturally leads to the most pressing question for you, the listener.
Which is, what does it actually cost to start one of these?
Exactly. The financial reality check. Let's look at the capital required to launch an ALF first.
Oh, the barrier to entry for an ALF is just massive. The source material mentions the steep entry costs. You aren't just buying a house.
Not at all.
You are paying exorbitant state licensing fees. You're funding the payroll for 247 nursing and care staff before you even have a full census of residents.
You're burning cash on day one.
Yeah, and you have to install like a commercial-grade kitchen to meet food service health codes, commercial fire suppression systems, and pass intense multi-agency health and safety inspections. You are literally funding a healthcare startup.
Which means your initial capital is heavily weighted toward operating expenses, or OPEX. You are burning cash on payroll and compliance.
Right.
Now, contrast that capital deployment with special needs housing. The accessibility is so much better. An investor can utilize standard residential properties they might already have in their portfolio.
Like a duplex or a small multifamily property.
Exactly, or even a single-family home. The capital goes toward making the home safe and functional, rather than funding a massive healthcare startup.
But I mean, if special needs housing is cheaper to start, is it truly hands-off? Or is the investor just trading healthcare regulations for strict accessibility and safety codes? Well, that's a very valid pushback. Because the capital still has to be deployed, just in a different direction.
Right, like if I'm housing veterans with physical disabilities, I can't just hand over the keys to a standard 1980s ranch home.
No, definitely not.
I assume I'm widening doorways to 36 inches, ripping out standard bathtubs to install zero-entry roll-in showers, reinforcing walls for grab bars. Those are significant construction costs.
They are. But the barrier to entry is lower not because it's free, but because the capital is deployed into the asset itself.
Ah, I see.
It's a capital expenditure. When you spend $20,000 retrofitting bathrooms and widening doors, you are fundamentally increasing the utility and the intrinsic value of your real estate asset.
And you can depreciate those improvements.
Exactly. Whereas when an ALF operator spends $20,000 on a month of nursing payroll, that money is just gone. It's a transient operational cost.
Okay, that makes profound financial sense. You are executing a heavy value-add play on the real estate itself, customizing it for an incredibly sticky tenant base rather than just bleeding capital through a healthcare payroll.
And that stickiness is reinforced by the payment mechanisms. We mentioned Medicaid waiver providers earlier, and it's really crucial to understand how that funding flows.
How does that work exactly?
Well, a Medicaid waiver essentially waives the requirement that an individual must be placed in a massive, expensive state institution to receive care funding.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it allows the state government to redirect those funds to support the individual in a community setting, like your retrofitted duplex.
Okay.
The state pays the nonprofit agency to provide the care, and a portion of those structured funds, combined with the resident's SSI, flows directly to the landlord for rent.
So the landlord is essentially receiving government-backed rent payments, completely insulated from standard macroeconomic job market fluctuations.
Exactly the point.
Yep.
The revenue stream is highly defensive.
Because if a recession hits, standard tenants lose their jobs and default on rent. But a Medicaid waiver payment or a VA housing voucher remains consistent.
Yes. So with all those financial realities laid out, how does this actually apply to the specific environment of Florida?
Here's where it gets really interesting. The 2026 data from Robert Flowers highlights a very specific set of markets where the demand is booming.
And severely outpacing supply.
Severely. We are looking at Miami, Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville, Fort Lauderdale, St. Petersburg, Tallahassee, and Pensacola.
Look closely at that list. Those are not just retirement communities.
No, they're major coastal hubs and massive metropolitan economic engines.
Right. The narrative that Florida is only for aging seniors is completely outdated.
Yeah, the migration patterns over the last 5 years have fundamentally altered these local economies. You have hundreds of thousands of high-earning remote workers and new corporations moving into Tampa and Miami.
Which drives up the median home price and skyrockets traditional rent.
Exactly, but the unintended consequence is that it completely prices out the most vulnerable populations. I mean, a veteran relying on a fixed housing voucher, or an adult with a developmental disability living on SSI, They cannot compete in a bidding war for an apartment in Orlando.
No, they can't. And this is where the friction with local municipalities occurs and where the savvy investor finds the opportunity.
Right.
Local zoning boards often try to restrict the development of affordable or supportive housing in these booming metros. They try to enforce strict single-family zoning to keep group homes out.
But because you are dealing with special needs housing, you are heavily protected by the Federal Fair Housing Act, right?
Exactly. The FHA mandates that municipalities must make reasonable accommodations in their zoning laws for individuals with disabilities.
So an investor who understands the federal law can essentially bypass local zoning blockades that would normally stop a standard developer in their tracks.
Yep. You have federal backing to place these supportive homes right in the middle of these high-demand, appreciating neighborhoods.
Giving the residents access to public transit, jobs, and actual community integration, rather than banishing them to the outskirts of the county.
And this creates the ultimate choice for you, the investor. Do you want to operate a heavily regulated but potentially very rewarding licensed care business? Or do you want dependable, stable rental income through a purely real estate-focused model?
While still solving a critical community need, of course.
Right, because both are desperately needed in the Florida landscape right now. The state is facing a massive infrastructure bottleneck. Seniors undeniably need highly regulated ALFs to age with dignity.
True.
And investors who can navigate that complex healthcare space will be rewarded. But the silent crisis, the one hidden beneath the surface of Florida's economic boom, is the lack of stable, supportive homes for adults with disabilities and those facing housing barriers.
The marginalized folks who don't need a nurse, they just need an accessible door and an affordable lease.
Exactly. For those individuals, special needs housing is the only barrier standing between them and homelessness. The state cannot build institutional facilities fast enough.
Nor should they, right?
No, community-based housing is vastly superior for the residents' independence and mental health.
So what does this all mean? Synthesizing everything we've explored today, for the everyday real estate investor looking for a practical entry point into impact investing, special needs housing offers a way to serve families without taking on medical liability.
It's a structural masterclass in risk mitigation. You focus your capital on upgrading the physical asset. You let federal laws protect your zoning rights. You let government waivers stabilize your rent roll. And you let dedicated nonprofits shoulder the immense burden of human care.
It's a purely symbiotic alignment of capital and community need. The landlord never has to pretend to be a doctor, and the doctor never has to worry about fixing the roof. If you are looking at your portfolio right now, maybe you have a duplex in St. Petersburg that's turning over, or you're looking to deploy capital in Jacksonville and this model makes logical sense to you, you really need to dive into the primary source material.
Yes, do not try to navigate the Fair Housing Act and partnership agreements by guessing.
No, you need to read Robert Flower's book, The Joy of Helping Others, Creating Passive Income Streams Through Special Needs Housing. Flowers and his firm hold an A+ Better Business Bureau rating for a reason.
Yeah, they have over 15 years of granular practical experience in this exact niche.
Because they don't just write theory, they actually consult with landlords to put these specific structural mechanisms into practice. They'll help you underwrite the ADA compliance costs and structure the nonprofit partnerships.
Which is invaluable.
You can bypass the trial and error entirely and literally just call their team directly at 901-621-3544. Again, that direct line is 901-621-3544.
And as we conclude this analysis, there's a lingering question I want you to ponder.
Okay, let's hear it.
We are watching traditional rental markets across the Sun Belt, especially in booming states like Florida, decouple completely from median wages. The cost of insurance and property taxes are forcing standard landlords to push rents past the breaking point.
It's totally unsustainable.
It is. So the question is, as traditional rental markets become increasingly unaffordable, could private investor partnerships with nonprofits become the only viable safety net keeping our most vulnerable populations housed in the future?
Oh, wow. That is a staggering concept to walk away with. It really reframes the entire purpose of the private landlord.
It really does.
We started this deep dive talking about fireworks and independence, but true independence for hundreds of thousands of people relies entirely on the foundation of a stable home. And providing a dignified place to live might just be the most impactful thing an investor can do.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Florida's shifting landscape. We will catch you on the next date.